Hi, econ students. Welcome to Concept 4.5, the money market. Everything that we've been learning about the money market and about banking is finally going to reconnect with the things we've been learning in Unit 1, 2, and 3 of macroeconomics. It all comes together under the money market. We had to understand banking to understand that the Federal Reserve can control the supply of money and change it, and that they have those three main tools to do that. Well, now we're going to look at what that change in the supply of money actually does and how it affects our economy as a whole. Let's dive in. So, we're going to have a brand new demand for money, a demand curve, and a brand new supply curve or supply for money. So, demand for money, why do we demand money? You don't really have to overthink it on this. Demand for money, we demand really for two basic reasons. Reason number one is we demand money for transactions, also known as DT. Demand for money as transactions means we hold on to money so we can buy goods and services. That's the reason we have it. But there's actually a second thing we do with money, which is where we demand money for its value as an asset. The value money has as an asset is that it has liquidity. I can put my money in a checking account, checkable deposits, and I know I can access it at any time to buy whatever goods and services in the future I want, right? So it's holding on to M1 as a store of value, to borrow a term from earlier. So I say, okay, I'm building up my value rather than putting into M2 or putting into M3. Remember, liquidity is the lowest possible risk. So if things are challenging in the world around us and I'm worried about losing money in the future, I might transfer that money from a bond or from an investment over into M1 and hold on to it, right? Also, interest rates have something to do with this, and this is what we pay most attention to. When interest rates rise, well, I would rather put my money from M1 into M2 because those things pay me interest. And so I'll, instead of holding on to money as an asset, I will put my money into a savings or put it into a bond or put it into a mutual fund or something that's going to pay me higher interest in the future. But if interest rates are really low, I'm like, well, why would I keep it in a savings bond if it's going to pay me nothing? I might as well have it in M1 so it has the liquidity. In other words, there's an inverse relationship between interest rates and the demand for money as an asset. When interest rates rise, the opportunity cost of holding M1 is really, really high because I could be earning money by putting into a savings bond. But when interest rates fall, the opportunity cost of holding as M1 is very low, so I might as well hold it as M1 and get that added liquidity as a result. All that to say, it looks like this. The demand for money is made up of two things. Let me grab a little marker here. First, I'll put this in vertical right there, is the demand for money as a transaction, BT. The demand for money as a transaction actually has no relationship with interest rates. If you think about it, I don't need more money because interest rates are higher. That doesn't affect my demand for money as a transaction. I'm not like, oh, interest rates are high. I need to buy a whole lot more of something or a whole lot less. In fact, my guess is in all of your buying situations or scenarios, I was going to say situarios, which I kind of like, you've never even thought about interest rates. With the exception of a house or a car, maybe when you're taking out a loan, that's a little bit different. So demand for money as a transaction is vertical because it has no relationship with interest rate. So here I might put this at 100. That would mean my demand for money as a transaction is $100. What's this downward curve then? This downward curve is the demand for money as an asset, or DA. It's downward sloping because there's an inverse relationship. When interest rates are really high, I don't want to hold on to money as an asset, M1. I would rather put that money in a savings bond and get this higher interest rate. But when interest rates fall, well, it doesn't make sense. There's a very low opportunity cost for holding money. So I might as well get that liquidity. So the demand for money as an asset goes up dramatically. So whenever you see something like this, demand for transaction will be a vertical curve. Demand for money as an asset will be the downward sloping curve, and it makes this kind of right triangle, right? And connects. Those two things together, or DT plus DA, equals DM, or demand for money, or MD as it's shown here, right? So most of the time you actually don't see the demand for money as a transaction or demand for money as an asset, but you do have to know that that's what makes up the demand for money, right? Most of the time you just see a nice clean demand for money. Know that the horizontal difference between the start of the curve and the X or Y axis, that difference right there is going to be my demand for money as a transaction. Okay. So oftentimes you'll see it like this, and then down here they'll say 50. And then they'll say, what's the demand for money as a transaction? And you have to know that that horizontal difference right there is the distance. And so it'll be $50 will be my demand for money as a transaction. Okay. All right. Let's keep going. What are some determinants? What's going to shift the demand for money? Well, it actually is pretty common sense. The things that shift at first is price level. If price level is going up, that means it takes more money to buy the same goods and services. That's what inflation is, right? So I'm going to demand more money so I can buy the same goods and services I did before. That's thing number one. Thing number two, there's a change in income. This is a change in national income, not a change in your personal income, right? When the nation as a whole, or GDP, that's another way of saying that, change in national income or GDP. When GDP rises, I'm going to need more money to buy those new or growing goods and services. So in consumption, investment, government spending, net exports rises, more money is demanded for transactions for all of those goods and services. And then when there's a change in technology, same thing. We're going to have more productivity. When there's more productivity, demand for money is going to shift to the right because I need more money to buy those new goods and services that are produced with that additional productivity. So those are your three main shifters. It can shift either direction. Keep that in mind. Okay. So what about the supply of money? Well, supply of money is 100% controlled by the Federal Reserve. They set the supply of money through their three main monetary tools. They can change the reserve ratio, they can change the discount rate, and they can buy and sell bonds. Those are three ways they can shift this curve to the right and to the left. But it's vertical because it has no relationship with interest rate. It is 100% regulated and set by the Fed. They can decide exactly what it is. So it's vertical because it's set by the Federal Reserve, right? So remember, the Fed is completely independent of any government regulation outside of the president appointing the Fed head. Outside of that, there's no political influence here. And so they have complete control over this aspect of our economy. Now, notice interest rates over here. This shouldn't be a surprise. The price of money is interest. We know that already. So interest rates are the price of money, and then down on our x-axis we have the quantity of money. So when we put supply of money and demand of money together, we get an equilibrium, just like we would in any market. This equilibrium sets the interest rate for the market through the changing of the supply of money. So for example, if the Fed decides they want to increase the supply of money, this will shift to the right. We'll have a new equilibrium and we'll have a lower interest rate, say maybe 3%. Or if they decide they want to decrease the supply of money, we'll shift this to the left, we'll have a new equilibrium, and we'll go up to say like 15%, right? So the Federal Reserve, through changing the supply of money, can change the interest rate. That should already unlock some things in your mind. You're like, well, when interest rate changes, I know that affects investment. And if interest rates go down, more businesses are going to invest, which means that higher demand is going to shift right, which means that GDP is going to rise and price level is going to rise, and we can close recessionary gaps. It all comes together. Speaking of all coming together, let's check that out right now. We have two types of monetary policy: expansionary monetary policy, which we are trying to expand the economy during a recession, and contractionary monetary policy. So, to expand the economy, we're going to increase the supply of money. Expansion means increase, increase, expansion, expansion, increase. Got it? Good. It looks like this. When we increase the supply of money through three tools, right? We can buy bonds. We can lower the reserve ratio. We can lower the discount rate. Most of the time, they'll buy bonds. Remember, buy big increases the supply of money. When that happens, new equilibrium, interest rates fall, right? So, in other words, when you increase the supply of money, it decreases the interest rates. What's that do? That's going to increase investment. Remember, interest rates have that inverse relationship with investment. So, when interest rates fall, investment rises. When investment rises, got to move my big head here. When investment rises, it increases aggregate demand, expanding the economy, right? It looks like this. Now, we added one new graph here. Everything else is the same. Look, we have supply of money or money market. We have investment demanded. We only have the demand for investment here. It's downward slope because that inverse relationship with interest rates. We'll show you that in a second. And then down here, we have aggregate demand and aggregate supply. All three of these graphs will play together. Notice investment demanded, the interest rates on the y-axis for investment demanded are the same as the interest rates for the money market. So when Fed increases the supply of money, interest rates will decrease, investment will increase, aggregate demand, GDP, price level will all increase. So increase, increase, increase as a result of a decrease in interest rates. So we increase the supply of money shifts right. That decreases the interest rate from 5% to 2%. When that happens, it sets a new interest rate for investment down to 2%. When we go down to 2%, our quantity rose for investment. When investment goes up, that's one of the four elements of aggregate demand. It's the IG of Sig-Jigson. Aggregate demand is going to shift to the right as a result. Expansionary monetary policy. So the Fed, if we're in a recession, we simply ask the Fed to lower the reserve ratio or lower the discount rate or buy bonds in order to increase the supply of money, decrease interest rates, increase investment, and increase aggregate demand. Okay, let's flip it. What about contractionary monetary policy? Contractionary is to decrease the supply of money. Contract, decrease, contract, decrease, contract, decrease. Got it? Great. When we decrease the supply of money, interest rates will rise because we'll have a new equilibrium. Remember, the Fed can do this in three ways. It can sell bonds, which takes money out of the banks and replaces it with bonds. They can increase the reserve ratio, which changes excess reserves. They can increase the discount rate, which changes the amount that banks are borrowing from the Fed. How does it affect aggregate demand? A decrease in supply of money increases the interest rate, which has an inverse relationship with investment. So investment falls, which means that aggregate demand, in my big head, is going to go down. Let's check it out all together. We have our new graph here. We know when the Fed decreases the supply of money to slow down the economy, interest rates, move my head here, go up, investment falls, and then GDP, aggregate demand, GDP, and price level are all going to fall. So if you're noticing something, everything moves in the same direction except interest rates. They move in the opposite direction. If I increase the supply of money, interest rates decrease, everything else increases. If I decrease the supply of money, interest rates increase, everything else decreases. Okay, that might be helpful to you. All right, so let's check it out. Supply of money shifts left. Interest rates go from 5% to 10%. When that happens, it sets the interest rate for the market, which impacts investment. It goes up to 10%, which gives me a lower quantity of investment because it's more costly to borrow in order to invest. As a result, investment is the IG of Sig-Jigson. Aggregate demand shifts to the left, lowering price level and lowering GDP, contracting our economy. Okay, we're going to stop right there. We're going to spend quite a bit of time working on these graphs because they're really, really important. Go ahead and try out that Khan Academy, and I will see you in class for more on 4.5. Peace.